Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this video, we will start to talk about ahkam of noon, sakina and tanween, and we will talk about izhar. So bismillah, let's go ahead. In terms of learning outcomes and what you should be able to get out of this video, number one is you should be able to analyze what izhar actually means. Number two, you should be able to identify the letters of izhar and where it applies in the Quran. And number three, you should be able to recognize some of the most common mistakes with izhar. So bismillah, let's jump into the details. Let's first ask the question, what is tanween anyway? What is tanween to start off with? Tanween is a noon sakina, so a noon that does not have a vowel, that Arabs add to nouns and is symbolized by a double haraka, double fatha, double dhamma or double kasra. But in effect, it's a noon sakina that is added to nouns in Arabic. So that's what tanween practically is. So if we say hakiman, hakiman, that's tanween. It's just like that tanween, the double fatha, is essentially adding a noon. And this tanween in Arabic is only pronounced when you are continuing the reading. So then it is pronounced when you're continuing the reading, but it is not pronounced when we stop. Hakima, when we stop. Or another example, alimun, alimun. So that's what tanween means, adding a noon at the end of a noun. Now, when there is a noon sakina, either a noon sakina as part of a word or a noon which is part of a tanween sakina. So when there is a noon sakina or tanween, something happens depending on the letter that comes after it. So in the Quran, when there is a noon sakina or tanween, there is a certain ruling or Tajweed ruling that it is read depending on the letter that comes after it. It will either be, so if it's certain letters, it would be izhar, so making it clear, or idgham, which is combining, or ikhfa, which is hiding, or qalb, which is changing the letter to a meme. Now, although these concepts are relatively well known, however, Insha'Allah, by the end of these 4 videos, you'll be able to pinpoint some of the most common errors with these practices. They are common topics, however, at the same time, we want to perfect how it's read, Insha'Allah, from this theory, and while practicing with a qualified mentor or sheikh or teacher, you will be able to get it very accurately, Insha'Allah. We will have separate videos on each of these 4 rulings, but for this one, let's talk about izhar. To start off with, izhar in Arabic means clarity or to make something clear. Izhar means to make something clear. Now, how does that apply to noon sakina and tanween? So when there is a noon sakina and tanween and 6 letters come after it, one of 6 letters, we pronounce the noon sakina or tanween clearly. We pronounce it clearly with no elongation of the ghunnah. So 2 points. We pronounce the noon clearly, and the second one with no elongation of the ghunnah. So let's take the word minhad, minhad. Now the noon here, minhad. The noon came out clearly from the makhraj, min, and there's no elongation of the ghunnah. So there is a ghunnah by default because the noon has a ghunnah, as we said in the makharaj of the huruf, the noon has a ghunnah, but you say minhad, minhad. Incorrect would be to say minhad or minhad. Now this is an easy example to clarify. So noon is pronounced clearly in izhar with no elongation of the ghunnah. The noon comes out from its makhraj clearly with no elongation of the ghunnah. So that was the definition of izhar. So what are the letters of izhar? The letters of izhar are hamza, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, kha. So these 6 letters, if they come after a noon sakina or tanween, izhar applies, which means the noon sakina or tanween are pronounced clearly. The noon is pronounced clearly from the makhraj with no elongation of the gunnah. And the note here is these can be in two words or in one word. So if there's a noon and that letter after it in the same word, for example, an'amta, a noon sakina, and then the ayn after it, one of the letters of izhar. So that noon, the tajweed ruling there is that noon will be pronounced with izhar, an'amta. Let's take a few examples of both noon sakina and tanween and see how we pronounce them with izhar. So here we'll say man aman, man aman, and we'll say minhad, an'amt, an'amt, alimun hakim, alimun hakim. So you see here, this is the tanween, alimun, effectively there's a noon, alimun hakim. ماء غدقا, we say ماء غدقا, not ماء غدقا. كفار أثيم, كفار أثيم. So in all of those examples we had either a noon sakina or a tanween which effectively has a noon sakina and one of the 6 letters after it, hamza, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, kha. So if any of these 6 letters comes after a noon sakina or tanween, the noon is pronounced clearly from its makhraj with no elongation of the gunnah. Now let's talk about the symbols in the Quran that indicate izhar. So in the Madani print or the Madani Mus'haf, there are symbols in the Quran that give you an indication that there is izhar here. And that symbol is a little kha, let's say, looks like a kha on top of the noon. So that when you see that little kha on top of the noon, that's a symbol that indicates that this noon has izhar. And with regards to tanween, the symbol for izhar with tanween is the double dhamma or double kasra or double fatha are staggered on top of each other. So you see aliman, hakima, aliman, the double fatha is right on top of each other. Alimun hakim, you see the dhamma there, 2 dhammas kind of staggered on top of each other. Kaffarin, same with the kasra, double kasras on top of each other. Now let's talk about some of the most common mistakes with izhar. The first one you would have probably guessed by now is prolonging that gunnah, and that is incorrect. So it will be incorrect to say minhad, and it's incorrect to say minhad. Correct is to say minhad, min, right? Noon has a gunnah, but there's no prolongation of that gunnah. Now that one's probably easy to notice, but another one would be with a tanween, alimun hakim. You don't want to prolong that gunnah. You don't want to say alimun hakim. So it should be alimun hakim with no prolongation of that gunnah on the noon. And the second very common mistake is to make a qalqalah on the noon, and that's kind of a mistake in the makhraj of noon. So for example, alimun hakim, alimun, so that's incorrect, alimun hakim. We want to say alimun hakim, no qalqala on the noon. So making it, pronouncing it clearly with izhar without a qalqala. And in another example, man aman, so that's pronounced correctly, but incorrect would be to add a qalqala there and to say man aman, man, and that is incorrect. Now let's revisit those learning objectives. Number 1, we said that you should be able to analyze the meaning of izhar. So what's the meaning of izhar? It's pronouncing a noon sakina or tanween clearly if it's followed by one of the letters of izhar with no prolongation of the gunnah. And the second one was to recognize the letters of izhar, and we said there are 6: hamza, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, kha. And the third one was to recognize some of the most common mistakes, and we've covered only a couple there, but inshallah now you can pinpoint them, and we'll see you in the next video. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.